Okay, my friends, Roger again one more time, Mudfossil University, today talking about the way the abdominal cavity seals. Very important because this is Mudfossil. This is my proof to geologists that what they study is not what they think they study. And I had this with a guy today. Now, here's the deal. This is the body cavity here. That's your abdomen. And there's a seam runs straight down, right straight through your whole body, right to your back. And it's the seam that fuses this side to this side. Now I'm going to show it to you in the as the fetus develops. All right, you just saw what a abdominal cavity looks like. That is what happens eventually as there's a ball. Like this is the fetus. It's a ball. It's called a blastula. And as that blastula starts to develop at a certain number of cells, and it's set in the program, it pops inside. That's when it does this. Eventually, you end up with this. The cavity is here, and it seals right here. This is the seal that breaks in mud fossils. The reason it breaks is because the mud fossils themselves become invaded with salt water. Salt preserves fresh flesh and fish and all kinds of things. They use it to preserve things. So these died and soaked in salt water. All of the volatile organic compounds, the explosive gases went into solvents in the water. You ended up with a mass of tissue that started to dry, and as it dried, it expanded and cracked and did all these things. The fascia maintained its integrity and saved all of the contents of organs and things of skin and all that stuff. Now, erosion happened and chemistry happened and this and that, so you had all kinds of different things happen once the preservation started from the drying. It could have been in all different chemistry. Near the kidneys, you're going to have different salts, and then there's going to be acids in different areas, all that business. So anyway, this is what you're starting with. Now, I'm arguing with this guy. He's, oh, I'm a geologist. I know all about this stuff. I said, well, let me tell you something, my friend. You don't know what you're studying. I said, let me ask you what this is. So I hit him, of course, with the vagina. So he puts it back. He says, well, for a second there, I thought it was something tee-hee, but maybe it's a throat. I said, are you kidding me? You seriously don't understand what you're seeing? And then he apparently realized there's no way he can back out of this, because I sent him another one. I'll show you in a second. But this is the split. You see that? That little tiny, thin split. That is the split that designates that central enclosure of the abdomen. So let me show you the other one I sent him, and then what I ended up saying. So I sent him this one, and I said, well, I guess, my friend, what do you think you're studying now? I mean, it's geology, but it's biology. You cannot in any way whatsoever deny this. It cannot be denied. Plus, I have CAT scans and DNA and chemistry and specimens coming out of my ears, and they still try to deny it. And this guy just shut his mouth and walked away. He's, oh, I'm a geologist. Well, let's talk about this. All right, on top of that, this is supposed to be granite, natural granite. Oh yeah, all natural. Just happens to come out of the earth like this. Like hell it does. You show that to any butcher that grinds up meat, and he'll say, yeah, we grind up stuff. It looks exactly like that. Identical to that. Identical to that. Now, what is this? That is the only piece of metal that I could find in this countertop, and it's 32 feet of countertop. The only piece of metal that I could find was that, and the reason for that is because this was ground up flesh. When it was right after the flood, they ground this up and took all the metals out of it. That is ground up. Now, the only reason you see these black spots here, that they would not normally have been there during the grinding up process, but the black spots are the vein blood. Vein blood is a different molecular structure than the red blood. The red blood turns rusty and sometimes stays red, but the black turns black and hard. It's just the way it is. But if any butcher looks at this, look at it, say, well, what would you do it if you ran it through a grinder? How would the earth make that? Just think about that. I mean, for God's sake. Here's some pretty red stuff up here. Anyway, all right, so that is granite. Now, there is granite that is real granite. Like this right over here. Let me show you. Whoops, let's just take this whole deal coming right over here. All right, you see that? That's a lung. All right. You say, oh yeah, that's rose granite. Whatever they call it. Well, that's blood. That's black and red blood running out of a lung. And the rest of the lung is here. Now, inside, it's not going to be like this. But this is what happens when oxygen exchanges in the blood. You have real black and then you have real red. And I'll show you another rock that my friend Gary Evans found over in England in a salt marsh. All right, Gary goes out and he finds this in a salt marsh. And he's looking at it and he sees some kind of funny looking stuff. So he gets it back and he does a little more investigating. Here's what he found. But I mean, look at what you see in here. Now that's just a chunk of mud rock. That's all right. Nothing exceptional. But his trained eye, he's a mud fossil researcher doing outstanding work, saw this. He took it back, and as it dried out, he started seeing these little pebbly things and so forth, and then he saw this. What is that? Guess what that is? That is a lung, my friend. That is a lung. All right, now. So, what do we see here? The black, the red, the tubing, the whole 9 yards. And this is what lungs do in the mud fossil process in wet, continuous, salty conditions. They do not rot. However, in dry conditions, they turn to powder and dust after the mud fossil process if they are in that condition like Gary's was. And once it comes out of there, it just turned to dust. This was only a couple weeks after he had it out of the ground. Let it dry out, and it did this. Now, this shows you that's the changing of the blood and so forth. That's the tissue of the lung. These are all the different tubes that go in and out of the lung to provide the airflow, and this is the blood that is saturated in the lungs, totally saturated with blood. It runs around all of these different little alveoli, I think they call them, which are the holes in the lung that transfer those gases into transition metals. Lungs are loaded with transition metals. Look what they're doing research on this now, looking into these transition metals. Finally. Okay, this is no new revelation. Granite is a recrystallized crushed stone after metal removal. I wrote this back August 2016. When they process rock for gold and metal removal, it must be completely pulverized, acids and such to extract the metals. Results are small chunks, granules, which we just saw, of uniformly homogeneous metal-free residue that will be well washed, and the result is the best polar silicate available. And they used it for construction, and those circular cores cut through, and they say, well, how did they do that? They just took them and they zipped right through while they were wet and putty. If compacted in heat or light or chemistry used to solidify and mix, it would, and was a very high quality concrete. And it just would dry up on its own. Simply adding oxides of iron would yield red and black granites, many hues in between. And then it goes on to talk about what is basalt, and it's a dark colored, fine grained igneous rock, which, yes, is from lava. But what is granite? Granite is intrusive, not supposed to be where it's found. The result is a coarse textured rock, which you saw in my countertop there, with individual mineral grains easily invisible. The grains are quite large compared to basalt crystals. The granules are very well mixed and quite uniform, do not contain metals to any normal degree. Rock does not come in this processed form. These granite intrusions with no metals, listen to this, are often located next to orogenic mineral systems. What does that mean? They contain all the metals in high proportions. Those will be the organs of these giant creatures, which they extracted and took the metals out, and we get the leftovers. This is what's in them. Why is there no precious metals? It's gone. And then the orogenic mineralized zones I just spoke about. And then it goes on, conclusion. Platinum group, electrum, and precious metals. The only thing missing from granite. That's all they took out. And then it goes on about the tailings were used for constructions and all that business. And it's just extremely obvious. They didn't carve these things like even these, I was watching the one about the obelisks. Most of those were not carved. Not carved whatsoever. They were ground up, homogeneous, what they would call granite. You look at them, if it's ground up, homogeneous, and has very, very, very few metals, it was from this process I am speaking of. Okay, this is Mudfossil University up here, mudfossils.com, and this is basic mudfossil research is the DNA report. It's the basis of everything here. And this report tells of 3 DNA tests I had done 4 years ago, and they came back as all positive. 2 of them were giants and 1 was not a giant. And they were positive for human mitochondrial DNA, just like ours. And this was done with absolute sterile conditions and done with ancient bacterial gene clean, ancient DNA extraction kits and all kinds of things. So don't tell me that, oh, you must have been accident, you must have screwed it up. No, because it also came back with a very high dense amount of DNA in at least 2 of the samples. 1, I didn't get so much DNA out of it because I didn't go as deep as I should have. The other 2, I went, cracked them way open, went down inside, all sterile, drilled down deep inside them, got the contents out of the veins. And these are the 2 that were dense. And then the other one was not so dense. But it still had the one of the 2 things that they're trying to amplify here. Or I don't know, so it's some of it, but let me put it that way. And I don't know how many things they're amplifying. I really don't know that much about it. But I do know that I see these primers 1A1 and 4F, and then A1 and 4F again. And on the 36 tip, which is a huge, huge 200-foot guy, that was this. Both of these had it. I think the other one only had 1 of these 2. The lung had both of them too, and both of them dense. Came right out of literally almost blood. I'll show you. Alright, these are lungs. This one here just gushed blood all over. It did this. Now this one didn't gush blood, but down in here blood is dense. And that's where we took it from inside of a red blood area. Alright, we went into an area like this and drilled right down into that. That's just red, solid, congealed blood is all that is. Alright, so all I can say is this was the samples. They were, not only were they DNA tested and came back with this result, they were also autopsy anatomist Gil Headley, who owns his own autopsy school, teaches all the way around the world. Like he's getting quite famous now. He specializes in the fascia now and understands it quite well. I've been worked with him years ago on this. And he certified them. They were CAT scanned by Jesse Garant and Associates, who has the best equipment in the entire world, industrial CAT scanning equipment, and it was DNA certified by Helix Paleo Labs. So it's time to have some geologists take understanding of this, and I'm writing a book. I'm going to have to write a book to make this understood, and I'm going to write the textbooks on it because it is wrong now, 100% wrong. If you start with a wrong premise and then say, oh, if you could learn this, and smectite is this, and forsterite is that, and igneous and metamorphic and this and that and so forth. Well, you're starting out with nothing. You're starting out, you didn't understand. It's all from life. It's from life. Not only that, my friend, the things that are coming into our space is from outer space. It is also from life. As far as I can tell, the entire universe is littered with life. I cannot explain it, but it needs to be looked at and studied, and that is what I am doing. So if you want to come on, come on. But don't tell me I'm crazy for doing this. You are crazy for not doing this.